From the War Room at a secret location that's so secret that half the time I can't find it. It's America's morning show, Quinn in the morning, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, around the corner and up your computer. I'll tell you what, I got to thank you people who are listening this morning because the response has been unbelievable. We started out needing one server and then two servers, and now we're on the verge of having to add an additional server. And we're working on a deal where we can get unlimited logons because I don't want anybody kicked off here. Because after all, we don't have listeners, we have customers, and I mean you guys are paying for this. Maybe someday we'll have enough affiliates we won't have to charge for the stream. We can all cross our fingers and hope for that. Got a lot of people I want to thank here, but I don't want to take too much time out of the program material because that's what you're paying for. So we'll get to that in the next hour. So much stuff going on. Iran. Let's see. We've got Iran, and of course, we have the latest liberal narrative. The latest liberal false narrative, of course, is the outrage over the Indiana law. You know, and what's great is in Alabama, they passed a law just like it, and the legislature said, bring it on. We're passing the law, and we're not changing a word of it. And we're not going to do it, so screw you, essentially. So, you know, there's some people out there who've got guts. But we'll get to that issue coming up here in just a second. But one of the great liberal narratives, of course, was the Duke rape case. We all remember that. All the liberals and the college professors, who, by the way, have never paid a price for any of this, were marching and fomenting trouble, not unlike Ferguson. So they're out on the college campus demanding that the lacrosse players get castrated. And in the meantime, of course, Mr. Nifong is lying through his teeth, and so is the woman involved, Crystal Mangan. Crystal Mangan, the last time I checked, Crystal Mangan was up for or had been convicted of the murder of her boyfriend. So it's funny. We never hear any, isn't it interesting? We hear follow-ups on all kinds of things on the mainstream media. We even have a follow-up on the Chick-fil-A guy who came up to the window and berated the young girl. I've got audio on that coming up, too. And Dana Perino had a great idea. We'll get to that. But, I mean, it's just astonishing what the media pays attention to. There hadn't been a word about a follow-up on the Duke rape case because it doesn't fit the narrative. Now, Ferguson, by the way, did you know that George Soros spent $36 million on 30 different anarchist groups to come into Ferguson and cause trouble and chaos? And, of course, they did. These people all got bussed in from out of town. Most of the people in Ferguson just want to be left alone and live their lives. Instead, they end up having their businesses burned down. How many millions, hundreds of millions of dollars were done in damage thanks to these rioters in Ferguson, paid for by George Soros? Now, if there's a lawyer in the audience, isn't there grounds here for a class action lawsuit naming these groups as plaintiffs and George Soros as a defendant? I'm just saying. So, anyway, we have all these false narratives. Are there any of these narratives that have ever been true? Hands up, don't shoot? Not true. Of course, it doesn't matter because if it fits the narrative. Well, like the other day, I was listening to, I think it was Fox, and they were talking about how hands up, don't shoot never happened. And one guy on the panel says, well, yeah, but it speaks to a larger issue. Now, that is liberalese for, I hope you don't have any sense of common sense. It speaks to a larger issue? Well, so what? It still doesn't justify lying to support the larger issue. And by the way, if the larger issue was really valid, you wouldn't have to lie about it. You have a whole lot of different instances to point to. The fact is, white cops are not going around shooting black kids. Those kinds of incidences are vanishingly small, and yet we don't hear about the knockout game. Black on white crime is rampant. Black on black crime is rampant. The kind of event that happened in Ferguson virtually never happens. But In order to drive group politics, we have to make sure that the world thinks that this is a larger issue. No, it doesn't speak to a larger issue because the larger issue doesn't exist. It's a false narrative. The latest false narrative, of course, is the response to the Indiana law. But there is one that really should be taken note of here as we move along. Jackie, the victim in the Rolling Stone magazine article about this horrific rape that took place at the University of Virginia. And, of course, naturally, the feminist wacko who runs the University of Virginia immediately responded without even considering the other side. Of course, Rolling Stone didn't talk to the other side either. And she shuts down all the fraternities. And then when it turns out the whole thing's a fake, she's resisting letting him start up again. See, because nobody wants to be wrong here. Liberals want liberals want a world filled with victims of the dominant culture, and when that doesn't work out, then we say things like, like Evan Thomas said after the Duke rape case. Well, I mean, the facts may have been wrong, but the narrative was right. I mean, this is the kind of Potemkin world we're living in here. So it turns out now that Jackie was never raped, that the entire Rolling Stone article is a complete fabrication. There isn't one shred of evidence. And congratulations to the Washington Post, by the way, for uncovering that. I'm beginning to wonder now if there even is a Jackie. See, we're being told that, Jackie won't cooperate now. But the liberal narrative is, okay, maybe this didn't happen, but something happened to her. Really? And what's the evidence for that? See, the only evidence we have here is she lied through her teeth. And if she lied, the chances are nothing happened to her. Oh, and the beat goes on. It's incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, Harry Reid, heads up. If I can find the Harry Reid heads up theme. Hold on 1 second, folks. I'm learning the new equipment. Here we go. That's right. Now, do you remember when Harry Reid went on the floor of the Senate, by the way, where he is protected from libel and slander? So, see, this little weasel, this little worm, this little pink-faced... It begins with P, and I can never remember it. It has something to do with rose bushes and your finger and thorns. Anyway, Harry Reid goes on the Senate floor and slanders Mitt Romney. I don't know how many of you remember it, but here it is.
The word's out that he hasn't paid any taxes for 10 years. Let him prove that he has paid taxes, because he hasn't.
And, of course, we all scratched our head and said, well, how do you know that? And he said, some guy told me. Nancy Pelosi stepped forward and said, well, it's true because some guy told him. And Harry Reid would never lie about a thing like that. Are you serious? Okay, so that's Harry Reid on the floor of the Senate. Now, Dana Bash at CNN asked Harry Reid about this incident, and here is what old Harry had to say. I hope you're sitting down.
So no regrets about Mitt Romney, about the Koch brothers. Some people have even called it McCarthyite.
Well, and call it whatever they want. Romney didn't win, did he? Romney didn't win, did he? Romney didn't win, did he?
This is the left-wing, by any means necessary crowd. And Megan Kendall had some Democrat hack on last night trying to say, the other side that said that Obama was born in Kenya. Nobody said it on the Senate floor. And frankly, that birth certificate they came up with for Donald Trump, well, we'll set that aside for a moment. But, I mean, somebody in the media should have gotten Harry Reid on TV and said, okay, Harry, you said on the floor of the Senate that Mitt Romney hadn't paid his taxes. Will you repeat that here? Because, see, in that venue, he would be liable for slander. But what a worm. Well, he didn't win, did he? Oh, I see. So it was okay to defame another human being during a presidential election. Because, I'm sorry, that did have an effect. A lot of people, Romney's problem was that, he was a rich guy. Well, this didn't help. He was a rich guy, didn't pay his taxes. You know who doesn't pay their taxes? Al Sharpton doesn't pay his taxes. That's who doesn't pay his taxes. federal government workers, $3.5 billion in the red. Are they being hauled into tax court? You try that and see how long you last. So there's Harry Reid with Dana Bash admitting, yeah, I lied. So what? You know, it worked. So I guess it was okay. See, this is what we're dealing with. And don't tell me, well, you know, the Republicans do the same thing. No, they don't. For the most part, they don't. This is that false equivalency. You know, like a Democrat steals a Cadillac, and so they find a Republican who stole a cookie and go, well, see, they do it too. No, they really don't. At least not to this extent. If you want to hear it one more time, let me, hold on a second, let me cue it up here. What is it, number 2? Yeah, here it is. Dana Bash, CNN.
So no regrets about Mitt Romney, about the Koch brothers. Some people have even called it McCarthyite.
Well, they call it whatever they want. Romney didn't win, did he? Romney didn't win, did he? Romney didn't win, did he?
You know, I think, by the way, Harry Reid is not going to run for re-election, so the sky is bluer and the air is cleaner, and the birds are chirping louder this morning. But, you know, there's a chance here that Harry Reid, if he's this much of a liar, how many other things is he lying about, like some of his land deals? And there's an interesting case starting to bubble up involving Terry McAuliffe and one of Hillary Clinton's brothers, and Harry Reid is up to his hips in it, too. We're going to try to get to that today. Stand by, folks. In the meantime, we are going to take a break, and we will be right back. From the War Room, it's America's Morning Show. Quinn in the morning. I'd give you an 800 number if I had one. But if we can make enough money doing this, we'll actually spring for one. All right, let's see. What's next on the agenda here? I know what's next on the agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a barking moonbat. Heads up.
They're coming to take me away, ha-ha. They're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha. To the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time. And I'll be happy to see those nice young men.
You know, actually, we have a couple of recipients here this morning. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them, but let's try this one first. Now, you remember that in Seattle, they passed a $15 minimum wage. See, because we all know that when you increase the minimum wage, you lift people out of poverty. Wrong. You end up killing jobs. Restaurants, shops are closing all over the place in Seattle as people are losing their jobs, okay, as a result of this. And one of the people who pushed this through the city council is a woman named Kashama Suwant. She appeared with her little burqa on, or whatever she was wearing. She appeared on TV, and she was questioned by a local TV anchor or somebody. And said, or was asked rather, well, I mean, you know, all of these job losses and stuff, I mean, isn't this as a result of this minimum wage?
It's the nationwide income and wealth inequality that has happened all around, all around the United States. And we have a low wage economy. Most of the workers who are entering the workforce now are facing low wage jobs regardless of the educational qualifications they have. And that's why we need living wage, and that's why the $15 an hour movement was spearheaded in Seattle, and it's going nationwide.
Oh, goody. It's going to go nationwide. Now, you know, first of all, you don't remedy income inequality by mandating that you make the same amount of money for flipping burgers as you do for brain surgery. That's not how you do it. But see, she's a dyed-in-the-wool socialist.
We're now seeing Los Angeles on the brink of voting on $15 an hour, and there 800,000 workers will benefit from $15 an hour. And as far as the local small businesses and restaurants you're talking about, small businesses always find it hard under capitalism because this economy is not made for small businesses to...
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. She just blamed capitalism for the loss of jobs. Okay, now, try to get your head around this, all right? She comes in there and she mandates that wages be paid which are more than the value of the production that can be achieved by a worker per hour. So she's set up a scenario where as every hour goes by, the owner of the business gets deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole. But that's not her fault. That's capitalism's fault. I mean, this is like me, putting sugar in the gas tank of your car at midnight, and then in the morning when your car stalls out in the driveway, I say, well, your car just isn't set up for sugar. See, if your car had been set up for sugar, well, your car probably would have run. But see, the problem is your car. So the fact that socialism kills the economy, that has nothing to do with why socialism is bad. No, it has everything to do with why capitalism is bad. See, because if capitalism was good, it would embrace socialism, and then we'd all live happily ever after.
To prosper, it's made for multinational corporations.
Oh,
but as a matter of fact, if you're worried about small businesses, then you should support a higher wage for the local economy, because that helps the business.
I know a lot of small business owners that truly feel it's their duty. It's what they want to do. They love their employees. The employees make their company work, and they would love to pay them more. They would love to provide more benefits, but it doesn't pencil out. And so as a result, they either have to close their doors, cut back on hours, lay people off, not hire certain people. How do you address that?
Well, this doomsday scenario that you're talking about, that is usually the big business fear-mongering.
Oh, my God. Folks, what do we sometimes I think we don't stand a chance. All right, relax out there. I'm just queuing up some sound bites here. Oh, let's see. Number 16. There we go. From the War Room, it's America's morning show, Quinn in the Morning. Now, for those of you who were not listening before the show began, because a lot of people did log on early, just so you understand, here's how we're working it. It's incumbent upon us here at this end not to send you a stream with nothing on it. And so because we have to feed our affiliates and they need spaces to run their commercials and their news, we're going to run the WYSL news at the top of the hour and the bottom of the hour, and then we're going to fill the breaks at 15 and 45 with some of these really tedious and inane PSAs. But it's better, I suppose, than listening to nothing. Then again, an argument could be made to the contrary. But anyway, just hang in there, folks. There's a lot of tweaking to do, and we're going to try to improve things as time goes on. Now, let's see. Where did I guess I want to start here. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a Hillary Clinton heads up.
My, oh my, you sure know how to arrange things.
Yeah, that's right.
You set it up so well, so carefully. Ain't it funny how your new life didn't change things? You're still the same old girl you used to be. You can't hide your lying eyes and your smile.
Well, the email stuff continues to haunt Hillary. I'm amazed that the mainstream media hasn't completely buried this yet, but apparently not. Now, Associated Press yesterday, thanks to a Freedom of Information Act, came out with some interesting emails that shows that she was indeed mixing her emails. She was mixing her business emails with her personal emails. It's all very strange, but, it's Hillary Clinton, all right? Now, a couple of little odds and ends here. A lot of people have wondered, how did she get away with this long? I mean, all 5 years when she was Secretary of State. I mean, where was the Inspector General? Well, the answer to that is there wasn't any. Obama never appointed an Inspector General to keep watch on Hillary Clinton or the State Department or anything else. Is that a surprise to you? Okay, so the acting inspector was a guy named Harold Geisel, who is so far up Obama's butt he hasn't seen the light of day probably in the last, 8 or 9 years. Now, let's see. Also, there's something else here that's kind of been forgotten. I mean, this story happened quite a while ago, but do you remember when she got hacked by Gawker? Well, it turns out that starting weeks before Islamic militants attacked the U.S. diplomatic outpost in Benghazi, Libya, longtime Clinton family confidant Sidney Blumenthal, a man who they say his friends even hate him, supplied intelligence to then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton gathered by a network that included a former CIA clandestine service officer, according to hacked emails from Blumenthal's account. Now, the emails were posted on the Internet back in 2013 to show that Blumenthal had another close Clinton associate discussed contracting with a retired Army Special Ops commander to put operatives on the ground near the border of Libya, Tunisia, while Libya's civil war was raging in 2011. So they knew, and Hillary knew at the time, that things were not good there and that extra security was definitely needed, and yet she ignored it entirely. George Will has written a great piece on this, and then we'll get to some of the sound bites. George Will wrote a great piece in the Washington Post. He says, an abscess of anger seems to gnaw at Hillary Clinton, but the reasons for her resentments remain unclear. The world's oldest party, Democrats, which governed the nation during 2 world wars and is the primary architect of America's oppressive regulatory and redistributive state, is eager to give her its presidential nomination, of course, in recognition of what? The party, oh, by the way, this is taking a toll on her. She was in the high 40s on her approval ratings. She's now in the mid-30s. The party, adrift in identity politics, clings, as shipwrecked sailors do to floating debris, to this odd feminist heroine, wafted into the upper reaches of American politics by stolid participation in her eventful marriage to a serial philanderer. Her performance in governance has been defined by 3 failures. Her husband, having assured the 1992 electorate that voting for him meant getting 2 for the price of 1. You remember that? He entrusted her to the project that he, and a harbinger of the next Democrat president's mistake, made his imminent and immediate priority, health care reform. Well, then Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, one of the few Democrats still with some sense, urged him to begin with welfare reform, just as wise Democrats warned President Obama to devote 2009 to economic recovery rather than health care. Well, that would have been a fool's errand anyway, because Obama's a communist and doesn't believe in capitalism, and he'll never do anything or enact any policy that's going to further capitalism in this country. What's that? You think, calling him a communist is over the top? Really? No, it isn't. It's calling him exactly who he is. See, the problem with the war on radical Islam is nobody will identify the enemy, all right? So it's important, if we're going to defeat Obama and his ideas, that we identify him for who he is. If you don't believe he's a communist, stick around. I probably won't get to it today, but I'll do the timeline on this guy and his background, okay? The sausage grinder this kid went through is not going to turn out Adam Smith at the other end. Anyway, back to George Will. Hillary Clinton enveloped her health care deliberations in secrecy, assembling behind closed doors bastions of the best and the brightest. God save us from the best and the brightest. The best and the bright, they're all these Ivy Leaguers who spend $200,000 to go to Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Brown, to get stupid. And the only thing they know is stuff that works in the faculty lounge. They come into the real world and try to apply it out here, and then they simply cannot understand, and they refuse to understand, why what they paid for ain't working. Anyway, We had battalions of the best and the brightest. Think, here, get this picture. A whole legion of Jonathan Grubers, behind the scenes, weaving complexities for the good of, but beyond the comprehension of, the public or, frankly, anyone else. When their handiwork was unveiled, it was so baroque that neither House of Congress, controlled by the Democrats, would even vote on it. This was one reason that in 1994 the Democrats lost control of the House for the first time in 40 years, a harbinger, by the way, of 2010, when Obamacare helped to end Nancy Pelosi's tenure as the first female speaker. That may be the only good thing about Obamacare. Clinton's Senate interlude was an uneventful prelude to her 2008 presidential quest, which earned her, as a consolation prize, the State Department. There, her tenure was defined by the reset button with Russia. Do you remember that? And they used the wrong Russian word. How embarrassing. You know, it's like, come on, who's running this place? So there was the reset with Russia, and of course there was regime change by bombers in Libya. Now these episodes supposedly recommend a reimmersion into Clintonism, a phenomena that in 2001 moved the Washington Post, no less, to say, more in anger than in sorrow, that, quote, the Clintons' defining characteristic is that they have no capacity for embarrassment. Boy, is that right on the money. This judgment was rendered as two episodes were demonstrating that the Clintons in power were defined by their manner of leaving power. If you remember, Bill Clinton punctuated his presidency by pardoning the late Mark Rich, a fugitive who 17 years earlier had been indicted for tax evasion, fraud, and racketeering. Rich also traded with Libya and South Africa in contravention of embargoes and traded with Iran during the hostage crisis. Nice. His former wife reportedly contributed more than $1 million to assorted Democratic causes, $450,000 for Clinton's presidential porn shop, and $10,000 to the legal defense fund necessitated by Clinton's glandular life that led to the Supreme Court effectively disbarring him from practicing before it. Now, a year before the Clintons decamped from Washington to begin planning their return to it, they began trucking away from the White House $190,000 worth of your stuff, furnishings. Because, see, everything is theirs. You have to understand, liberals, everything is theirs. All property is the property of everybody else. You know, it's kind of like the Berkeley free store. You know, it's 1967, and hey, man, we got this free store. Like, there's no capitalism and there's no profit or anything, you know. It's like people come in and they just take what they need, and nobody makes a profit, and it's all good, and it's all altruistic. And people come in and they take just what they need, and it's all free. Except the first guy who came in took everything. Well, of course, Hillary was dead broke, we found out later, right? The furnishings became, as things often do with the Clintons, another occasion for, it depends on what the meaning of the word is sort of a tiptoe along the line of illegality. The White House chief usher, though, thought many of those items were government property, donated in 1993 to recondition the White House. Several donors of items said that's what they were told. Suckers. Now, although the Clintons said that all they removed were personal gifts, they only returned $28,000 worth of them. Now, as Hillary Clinton begins her campaign to again reside with White House furnishings, remember an episode perhaps pertinent to the family penchant for secrecy and to her personal email server? Sandy Berger, remember Sandy Pants, who had been President Clinton's national security advisor, was his designated representative to the 9/11 Commission that investigated the attacks. You remember the 9/11 Commission? Jamie Gorelick was on it. You know why she was on it? So she wouldn't be called as a witness, because it was her wall that was erected to keep the Clintons from being prosecuted for Chinagate that prevented intelligence from talking to the FBI. It could have prevented 9/11, but it didn't, so Sandy Pants had to get in there and find those documents and destroy them. He was fined $50,000 for taking highly classified documents and destroying them. But then again, he got off the hook. He was just sloppy. You know, he just admitted to being sloppy. I do that all the time. I can't tell you the number of times that I have taken valuable documents from my house and hid them in my pants, and sometimes under a construction cabin. And, when they got rained on. And, this happens all the time, right? Of course, in the meantime, Petraeus has to make some kind of a plea because he's got one piece of paper in his desk. Hillary has wiped her server, and we're all supposed to go, oh, well, never mind. Believe me, unless she used military encryption, and if she did, that says a lot. That server is not wiped. Those emails are there. But anyway, says George Will, another Clinton presidency probably would include a reprise of the couple's well-known patterns of behavior. Voters will make an informed choice. All right, we've got sound bites on this, and we are going to get to those coming up, so stand by. All right, we are back from the War Room, America's morning show. Well, the latest curve that the equipment threw me here is my atomic clock has decided to reset itself here while I'm on the show. So thank God I got an iPhone here and I can get the exact time. All right, back to the Hillary stuff. This is Hillary Clinton. Remember the Pretty in Pink press conference where she was asked about the cattle futures? You remember that? Well, she just had this press conference a while back here. I call it the tacky and tweed press conference. She said this.
When I got to work as Secretary of State, I opted for convenience to use my personal email account, which was allowed by the State Department, because I thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of two. Looking back, it would have been probably, smarter to have used two devices.
Of course, she's lying through her teeth. She had at least three. She had a BlackBerry, she had the phone, and she had an iPad, and then there's some other questions about laptops and whatever. So, she's lying through her teeth, but that's what she does. You want to know the background on cattle futures? Well, you know what? If I have time, I will explain that. But in the meantime, I just want to get through these sound bites. So Trey Gowdy had a message for her. He wants her to testify behind closed doors. Actually, her people have said that she's willing to testify in front of the public. Now, I don't know if that's going to stand today, but we'll see. So here's Trey Gowdy.
Let's have a private conversation about why you had your own server, why you didn't return the records when you left the State Department, and why you decided to permanently delete them when you knew that congressional investigations were ongoing.
Well, because she figured that whatever it is that was on those servers, or that server, was more damaging than the controversy over wiping it of everything, which apparently, according to her, or at least to her lawyer, she has done. Judge Napolitano, can she face criminal charges?
This started in September 2012, Benghazi, when then chair of one of the House committees, Congressman Chaffetz, wrote a letter saying, preserve all your documents because this is what we want. So she's been on notice. She was the sitting Secretary of State at the time. She's been on notice since then that Congress were seeking the documents. She basically told Congress, and after that there were 3 subpoenas. She basically told Congress what they could do with their subpoenas and with their letters, and managed to destroy them.
Okay, that was the wrong soundbite, but you get the drift. Here's the soundbite for can she face criminal charges?
This started in September.
Oh, no, it isn't. Hold on a second. Let me go back one more. Here we go.
She certainly can face criminal charges with the acknowledgement Friday evening that she wiped the server clean after she knew that Congress was looking for her documents.
What's the matter with that?
Well, she has added to potential crimes. We already know that she's admitted to the crime of concealing the government's documents from the government while a government employee. She's admitted to the crime of diverting classified information away from a government-secured venue and putting it on her own. Right. She now has acknowledged destruction of government property, and because the government was seeking that property at the time she destroyed it, obstruction of justice. But none of these charges will mean anything if she's not accused or charged by a prosecutor. And who controls the federal prosecution apparatus? Eric Holder.
Yeah. The Department of Social Justice. Let's see. And then there was one more question Napolitano was asked. He was asked, what about her defense? You know, the yoga and wedding email defense.
Well, that's really hogwash because she's a lawyer. She's been in the government for a long time. She was First Lady. She was United States Senator from New York for 8 years. And when she made that statement, she had already served 4 years as Secretary of State. She knows that the law says the government has mechanisms to protect the privacy of its employees, but the government decides, not the employee, what's personal and what is to be kept secret and what is to be exposed. And she knew that the Congress was looking for this information.
If she indeed knew that, then, I mean, when you see that
the key is as to whether or not she's committed the crime of obstruction of justice when she ordered the server wiped.
Right.
She is going to argue that in January of 2015, a new Congress came in. And so the subpoenas and the letters that preceded January 15 were then no longer valid. That is the technical argument that she's going to make. And in terms of avoiding criminal prosecution, there's some merit to that argument. But the public will react the way we're reacting. That's absurd. You have known for years the government wanted this. As a lawyer, when the government wants documents, you have a duty to preserve them, not destroy them.
Yeah, exactly. That's Judge Napolitano on Hillary. I don't have time to explain. I'll explain the cattle futures thing again to you. It was really sweet the way they made it work. Trust me, we'll explain all that at some future time. But in the meantime, we got to take a break here. We'll be right back. From the War Room, it's America's Morning Show. Quinn in the Morning. No 800 number yet. Those of you who are listening on the web this morning, the apps are on the way. We ran into some kind of a kink with them. We'll get them up, and there'll be apps for your iPhone and your Android. Actually, I was able to listen just by using Safari on my iPhone. You know, Safari, and logged in and hit the player, and it worked fine even without the app. So hang in there. It'll just be a bit of a convenience when you get it, and a bit of an inconvenience because you don't have it yet. All right. First, I want to say some thank yous here because I'm broadcasting from a secret location that's so secret that sometimes I can't find it. Of course, then I get to my age, I'm lucky if I can find the bathroom. So anyway, the studio had to be built. Actually, the equipment had to be ordered and built and tested and put together. It's pretty complicated stuff. And because I wanted to make sure that when we went on the air, it wasn't just like an internet broadcast where some guy plugs a microphone into a computer and then, just starts talking into the microphone. I mean, I wanted this to be a full-scale professional studio. And that's exactly what I got. Now I need a professional talk show host, and who knows, may find one. Anyway, the people that did this are the people at WYSL in Rochester, New York. The owner, Bob Savage, been a longtime friend, many years, and his electronic guru, Bobby D'Angelo, who actually trucked all this stuff down here and set it all up and continues to give advice and tweaks and whatever. Just a tremendous guy. Both of these guys are super. Mark Humphreys, another guy associated with WYSL, just a great job. And also, it would be really remiss of me if I did not credit Rose. See, putting together a business, a chapter sub S, it's called War Room Media. War Room Media, Inc. Putting this together and putting together all this PayPal stuff and the structure of the business and all the paperwork and the the phone calls and the stuff that goes with it, it's a back-breaking, crushing job that just takes hours and hours and hours of tedious work, the kind of work that I am way too ADD to be able to even tackle. I mean, there's no way that any of this could be happening right now if Rose hadn't worked her tail off and dedicated so much of her time to this. And I love you, Rose, and you've done an amazing job. All right, a little racial news here, and we're going to have to go back a few weeks. Now, you remember the big celebration at Selma, Alabama. Oh, yeah, and Obama was there. And was Sharpton there? I wouldn't be surprised if he was. I'm sure that he's ready to cash in on that. Now, what was interesting was the media's attempt to make sure that the American people never saw a conservative anywhere at that march was so effective that one conservative pundit actually wrote an article, I forget for what newspaper, but wrote an article lamenting the fact that the GOP didn't show up at Selma. Well, the fact is, they did. George W. Bush was there. I think Boehner was there. There was a whole contingent of Republicans there, but the media was very, very good at totally ignoring it, not saying a word about it. I mean, I bought into it, too. I'm watching all of this. I'm going, where are we? And it turns out that the New York Times actually edited a picture. They cropped a picture so that George W. Bush wouldn't be seen marching in Selma. Now, this is one of the great sell jobs in the history of propaganda. And I know, well, I'll get to the Indiana law, speaking of propaganda. But this is one of the great sell jobs in propaganda. This is a great lesson. Because if we look at the history of the Democrat Party, there's no way they ought to be marching in Selma. But over the years, politics, academia, and media have managed to turn the truth on its head. As we've often said on the show, blacks voted in the South for 30 years after the Civil War until the Democrats took over. And when I hear Al Sharpton decrying Jim Crow laws, I want to puke. It's your party who invented them, Al. So let's do a little redux here, because Selma is important, but it's important for a reason that's a little bit different from what you're going to hear from the mainstream media. Selma is important because it was the day the Democrats realized they could no longer oppress black people. So instead, they decided to exploit them. And so they have. And the Great Society programs, and the destruction of the inner city, the collapse of the black family, it's all working out, I guess. Well, it's working out because they're voting 95% for Democrats, so I guess it's working out. I mean, this is the Harry Reid rule. It doesn't matter whether it's right or whether it's wrong, whether it's true or whether it's false, as long as it works, as long as we win. By any means necessary. Well, let's take a look at the real history of the Democrat Party. You may have heard this before, but I want to take this opportunity in the wake of the Selma celebration to just remind you that it was Democrats who fought to expand slavery. Republicans were fighting to end it. Democrats passed the discriminatory black codes and Jim Crow laws to make sure that black people were disenfranchised from voting. Democrats supported and passed the Missouri Compromise to protect slavery. Democrats supported and passed the Kansas-Nebraska Act to expand slavery. Democrats supported and backed the Dred Scott decision. Democrats opposed educating blacks and murdered their teachers. Democrats fought against anti-lynching laws. Democrat Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia was a Kleagle, that's a recruiter, in the Ku Klux Klan. Democrat Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia personally filibustered the Civil Rights Act of 1964 for 14 straight hours to keep it from passing. Democrats passed the Repeal Act of 1894 that overturned civil rights laws enacted by the Republicans. Democrats declared that they would rather vote for a yellow dog than vote for a Republican because the Republican Party was known as the party for blacks. By the way, the retort to this from the political left is, well, back then, the parties were reversed. They're not the same parties that they were then. That's a crock. And Francis Rice, great black historian, attacks that in a very interesting article. I don't have time for it today, but just blows that whole theory right out of the water. That's a bunch of nonsense. Democrat President Woodrow Wilson reintroduced segregation throughout the federal government immediately upon taking office in 1913. And by the way, he fired every black person in the federal government because, his words, they spread disease. Democrat President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's first appointment to the court was a life member of the KKK, Hugo Black, Democrat, Alabama. Democrat President Franklin D. Roosevelt's choice for president vice president in 1944 was Harry Truman. Truman joined the KKK in Kansas City in 1922. Democrat President Franklin D. Roosevelt resisted Republican efforts to pass a federal law against lynching. Democrat President Franklin D. Roosevelt opposed integration of the armed forces. Democrat Senators Sam Ervin, Al Gore Sr., and Robert Byrd were the chief opponents of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Democrats supported and backed Judge John Ferguson in the case of Plessy versus Ferguson. Democrats supported the school board of Topeka, Kansas in the case Brown versus the Board of Education. Democrat Public Safety Commissioner Eugene Bull Connor in Birmingham, Alabama, unleashed vicious dogs and turned fire hoses on black civil rights demonstrators. There were no Republicans anywhere to be found. Democrats, who were Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Democrats were who Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other protesters were fighting. Democrat Georgia Governor Lester Maddox, remember him? He brandished an axe handle to prevent blacks from patronizing his restaurant. Democrat Governor George Wallace stood in front of the Alabama schoolhouse in '63 declaring that there would be segregation forever. Democrat Arkansas Governor Faubus tried to prevent desegregation of the Little Rock public schools. Democrat Senator John Kennedy voted against the 1957 Civil Rights Act. Democrat President John Kennedy opposed the '63 March on Washington by Dr. King. He also had Dr. King wiretapped and investigated by the FBI. Democrat President Bill Clinton's mentor, U.S. Senator J. William Fulbright, an Arkansas Democrat and a supporter of racial segregation. Democrat President Bill Clinton interned for William Fulbright, 1966 and 67. Democrat Senator J. William Fulbright signed the Southern Manifesto opposing the Supreme Court's 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision. Also, Fulbright joined with the Dixiecrats in filibustering the Civil Rights Act of 1957 and 1964. He also voted against the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Southern Democrats opposed desegregation and integration. Also, the Democrats opposed the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments, the Reconstruction Act of 1867, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, the Enforcement Act of 1870, the Forced Act of 1871, the KKK Act of 1871, the Civil Rights Act of 75, the Freeman Bureau, the Civil Rights Act of 57, 60, and the United States Civil Rights Commission. Republicans supported every one of those things. This is the true history of the Democrat Party, folks. This is who they are. They exploited blacks until they couldn't exploit them anymore, and then they decided oppress them until they couldn't oppress them anymore. Then they decided to exploit them. And so they did. And it's worked. Blacks are voting for Democrats 95% of the time, even though the Democrat Party's history is one of oppression and slavery, and then finally exploitation. The ruination of the inner city, the ruination of the black family. The liberal policies that have collapsed life for so many black Americans has come from the left, because the left really doesn't care about your welfare. They just care that you will continue to feel like you are a victim of whatever boogeyman they can throw at you, in this case the white dominant culture, and make you think that you're a failure because somebody else is making you fail, when in fact it's their policies that mire you in the mind-forged manacles of failure. What a shame. From the War Room, it's America's Morning Show. Quinn in the Morning, live on the net and a local affiliate near you. All right. Some guy said, I don't care if you don't have an 800 number. Just give me your cell phone number so I can call and say hello. Well, I'd like to do that, but I think we'd be inundated here. Thanks to everybody, by the way, who signed up. We were blown away. We had no idea. It was at first we had a server all set up to handle just tons of calls. Now we got 2 servers, and we're bordering on needing a third one now. Anyway, let's get right to this. We have another, and believe it or not, folks, we never run out of these. We have another barking moonbat. Heads up.
They're coming to take me away, ha-ha. They're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha. To the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time. And I'll be happy to see those nice young men in their clean white coats. And they're coming to take me away, ha-ha.
Well, continuing the tradition of it's always best in America to be a victim, enter Representative Vanessa Summers, Democrat from Indianapolis. She has represented the 99th District since 1991. Now, I don't know what this says about the 99th District. Well, yeah, actually I do. But anyway, why pick on the 99th District? She said that her colleague's toddler was afraid of her because her colleague's toddler was a racist. The toddler was afraid of her because she's black. Now, the already contentious debate was going on about Indiana's proposed religious freedom bill, and apparently last week it took a surreal twist. I think it was Monday, when in the midst of the discussion on the bill, a Democrat lawmaker said that a Republican lawmaker's child was scared of her because she was black. The comment by Representative Vanessa Summers drew audible gasps, in no small part because the child, the son of Representative Judd McMillan, is all of 18 months old. You know, this reminds me, there was a story in Pittsburgh some years ago where I think it was the NAACP was claiming that a police dog was a racist. A McKees Rocks police dog was a racist because he went after some black guy. Of course, it couldn't be the fact the guy was the perp at the time, but anyway, just setting that aside. So I told Judd McMillan, I love his son, but, and remember everything before but is BS, he's scared of me because of my color, Summers told McMillan, who is white, during a debate over the Religious Freedom Restoration Act in the House. It's hard, said Summers, Democrat from Indianapolis. Then as other lawmakers groaned at the comments, she followed up with, well, it's true. He looked at me like I was a monster and then turned around and cried. And I told him, you need to introduce your child to some people that are dark-skinned so you won't be so scared. McMillan, Representative Republican from Brookville, called Summers' comments unfortunate. No, they're not unfortunate. They're liberal. It's all about group identity. Look, folks, I'll explain group identity politics and how it relates to this Religious Freedom Restoration Act in a little while. It's just incredibly unfortunate. You know, like you'd like to think that we have a professional discussion here on the House floor and certainly be able to avoid having an 18-month-old called a racist in the discussion. I can tell you that if he reacted that way to you, ma'am, he reacts the same way to anybody brand new. He buries his head in his dad's shoulder, McMillan said. Whoever it is, it's what he does. He's 18 months old. And he's in a new environment here in a place like the State House, but he doesn't know anybody. I honestly don't remember anything out of the ordinary. It's a hard fact of life. Toddlers cry. They cry when dad picks them up. They cry when mom puts them down. They cry when they're hungry. And while they're being fed, they cry before a nap and after a nap and on an especially bad day for their parents during a nap. Why do they cry? Simple. They cry because they're toddlers, you moonbat.
They're coming to take me away, ha-ha. They're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha. To the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time. And I'll be happy to see those nice young men in their clean white coats. And they're coming to take me away, ha-ha.
All right, stand by, folks. In the next break, we're going to get into this so-called Restoration of Freedom Act or whatever. Just stand by, and we'll get it on coming up. Don't go away. From the War Room, it's America's Morning Show, Quinn in the Morning, from a top-secret location, so secret that sometimes I can't find it. Although I did bump into Dick Cheney in the hallway. All right. Where do we, I want to get to this Religious Freedom Act that's causing all this so-called controversy. This is all ginned up, folks. This is all a manufactured outrage. It's an opportunity by the left to portray themselves as victims for the advancement of their own narrative. We'll get to that in a second, but there is one soundbite that occurred sometime, I guess, about 3 weeks ago, that I've just been itching to play for you because it's just so rich. Obama was asked about the rise of ISIS, and he blamed it on Bush. I kid you not. How many years now are we into this? Yeah, the JV team, nobody even knew who the JV team was until long after Obama was in office. And so Obama was asked about this, and here's what he said.
ISIL is a direct outgrowth of al-Qaeda in Iraq. That grew out of our invasion.
No, it didn't.
Which is an example of unintended consequences, which is why we should generally aim before we shoot.
Listening to this guy, whenever you question this guy, it's like talking to your 17-year-old kid. When you try to ask him how why did you put a dent in the car when I told you not to drive it? He's got a million reasons why he's right and you're wrong. Listen, listen one more time to this because it's just amazing.
ISIL is a direct outgrowth of al-Qaeda in Iraq. That grew out of our invasion.
No, it didn't. It grew out of you bugging out against the advice of everybody in the military and half the other people in the Department of Homeland Security. You bugged out because you promised your moonbat followers from the Daily Kos and Mother Jones that you would end the war whether it was over or not. So if you leave a war and it's not really over, you can't say it's over. Because after you leave, the bad guys are going to take over, and they did. It's just amazing listening to this guy. I mean, trying to get an answer out of Obama is like trying to nail Jell-O to a tree. And now we go to the law in Indiana, and of course it's the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and it's being portrayed now as an axe handle being pounded over the heads of gay and lesbian people, which is completely untrue. And the outrage is based, I guess, on the fact that, to be fair, the law is slightly broader than the law that Bill Clinton passed and signed. Or, I'm sorry, Bill Clinton didn't pass it. He signed it. The House of Representatives in 1993 passed it unanimously, and the Senate passed it, I think it was 97-3. Yeah, something like that. And Bill Clinton, back in the day, had a lot to say about it. Hold on a second. Let me find the soundbite. Here it is.
We are a people of faith. We have been so secure in that faith that we have enshrined in our Constitution protections for people who profess no faith. And good for us for doing so. That is what the First Amendment is all about. But let us never believe that the freedom of religion imposes on any of us some responsibility to run from our convictions. Let us instead respect one another's faiths, fight to the death to preserve the right of every American to practice whatever convictions he or she has.
Yeah, okay, so that's Bill Clinton in 1993. All right? And now, let's see, we got another soundbite here. I'll get Mike Pence. Okay. Now, Mike Pence, of course, is the governor of Indiana. And all of a sudden, he finds himself at the center of a firestorm, which I guess he didn't understand was coming, And frankly, in a sense, I don't blame them because there's 19 other states that have the same law. And what's really amazing is that the moonbat governor of Connecticut comes out with a statement condemning the law in Indiana when, in fact, his own state has a law that's even more stringent than the one in Indiana. And then we've got, heads of corporations. I mean, I canceled my Angie's List when I found out their response to it. And there's people, oh, yeah, we're going to take our business out of Indiana. We're going to go to Illinois. I got news for you. Illinois has the same law, and Barack Obama voted for it when he was a senator. I mean, the hypocrisy here, folks, you can cut with a knife. It's just insane. All right, now here's Mike Pence, shows up yesterday at a press conference. Some people are calling it a cave, but here's what he had to say.
The Religious Freedom Restoration Act was about religious liberty, not about discrimination. But as I said, we've got a perception problem here because some people have a different view. And we intend to correct that. I've come to the conclusion that it would be helpful to move legislation this week that makes it clear that this law does not give businesses a right to deny services to anyone.
Well, that's true, and it doesn't. See, as Limbaugh put it yesterday, and quite rightly, he said that this law is not a weapon, it's a shield. Well, that's right, but see, Rush, that's why they're mad. That's why the left is pissed off. They don't want you to have a shield. When people are saying, well, the federal government has this law, why didn't it protect the bakery that didn't want to make a wedding cake for the gay marriage, the gay wedding ceremony, or it didn't protect the photographer who didn't want to photograph the gay wedding? I mean, both of those businesses are out of business now. They're out of business, and the federal law didn't protect them because Eric Holder doesn't like the federal law, and he doesn't enforce it. You have to remember, this is not the Justice Department. It's the Social Justice Department. If it's about getting even with the dominant culture, well, then we're all for it. I mean, we'll even make stuff up. But if it's about a complaint by the dominant culture, well, screw them. I mean, we've suffered for centuries. Let them suffer now, too. And that's how that works. So this is why 20 states have enacted these laws themselves so they can protect people. Now, as I said, it's not a weapon, it's a shield. So if somebody like the baker who didn't want to see, in the case of the baker is being asked to make a wedding cake for a gay wedding, all right? And the baker is saying, this is different from accommodation where somebody walks into a restaurant. This is about asking me to participate in something that I have a moral problem with. So in that case, even if this guy was charged with discrimination, this law would allow him to make his case in court and push back. Now, the guy that says, you know what, now that we got this law, well, I'm going to make sure blacks don't come into my restaurant. Well, guess what? That guy's going to be charged with discrimination, and when he brings that law up in court, it ain't going to work. He's going to lose. No one has been discriminated against in any case under any of these laws. This law has never been used to support discrimination against anybody. Nobody. Zip. Nada. So why is the left all upset about it? Well, they're all upset about it because they can be. Now, you may wonder, well, wait a minute, why weren't they upset about the 1993 law? Because the 1993 law was originally enacted on behalf of Native Americans who wanted to use peyote. They wanted to smoke peyote as part of their religious ritual. And, of course, it was against the law, so this was the motivating factor. So now the American Indian group can smoke peyote. Makes me wonder, can Elizabeth Warren smoke peyote now? I mean, I'm just asking. So that's what it was originally enacted for. That was the driving, motivating force behind it. But we have all these other ones. We have 19 other states. Now, why didn't anybody object to, didn't anybody see the slippery slope when Bill Clinton signed it? Well, no, because Bill Clinton's a Democrat. Well, how about Connecticut? Well, enacted by Democrats. How about Illinois? enacted by Democrats. So the world is strangely silent, but along comes a Republican governor who signs the same law, and we have this huge outrage generated, ginned up by gay activist and LBTJ, whatever they are, groups, and they're bullies. I mean, these are people who will bully you out of business. I mean, this bake shop that had to go out of business and the photographer that had to go out of business, they were targeted, all right? They were targeted just to push an agenda, just to make a case. These people went out looking for trouble. There's a lot of bakeries out there. Just go to another one, because my freedom ends where yours begins and vice versa. But see, on the left, you don't get any freedom if you're part of the dominant culture. They get all the freedom. And their freedom is the freedom to force you to believe everything they believe, whether you like it or not. That's their definition of freedom. So, the fact that this law is not a weapon, but it's actually a shield, that's not a convincing argument for the left, because that's why they're mad. They don't want you to have a shield. They want to be able to run roughshod over you. They want to be able to intimidate and bully you into silence. There's no free speech with the left. It was always about their speech. It was never about free speech. That's not who the left is. The left is totalitarian by its very nature. Communism, Nazism, fascism, socialism, they're all left-wing. So now we have Mike Pence, apparently, willing to rewrite legislation based not on something that's actually wrong with the legislation, but rewriting legislation in response to a false narrative. I mean, that's where we are. That's absolutely amazing. George Will last night.
There's nothing more tiresome in modern American life than the indignation sweepstakes we get in all the time to see who can be most angry about this and that. Tim Cook, as was mentioned, the CEO of Apple, as Peter Ducey mentioned in his piece, thinks Indiana is a horrible place. He opened marketing and retailing operations in Saudi Arabia 2 months before a man was sentenced to 450 lashes for being gay. So the selective indignation is itself wonderful.
Yes, ain't it? And then there was Tucker Carlson who weighed in. Hold on a second, let me get the right one up here. Okay, there we go. Tucker Carlson last night.
The demagoguery around this is really nauseating, I will say, echoing George Will's comments. We've always made exceptions for religious minorities. Quakers can become conscientious objectors. So you have a country where religious minorities get to choose which wars they fight in, but not whether to serve cupcakes at a wedding that would violate their religious principles. It's insane. And I have to say, all the talk of tolerance that a lot of us sort of took at face value in the 90s and even last decade, why can't we always get along and you accept me, I'll accept you? They didn't mean it at all. These are absolutists. These are jihadis. These are people who want to make you obey, that don't brook any opposition to their worldview at all. They will crush you. As one of my editors, one of the smartest people in my office, Jim Antle, said, today's social liberals are very much like the stereotype of yesterday's social conservatives. They set the societal norms, and anyone who deviates from them is punished. That's not tolerance. That's authoritarianism.
That's exactly right. And that's what the left is all about. The left is all about authoritarianism. And you're seeing this in front of you now. Now, of course, you have to understand something that's going on here. Group politics, group identity politics, is based on the notion that if we group people, then we can keep the group cohesive and they can act as a political entity to bully politicians, to bully corporations into doing whatever it is that their agenda is. They come up with their own set of rights, and if you're against them, of course, that means you're a bigot because, I mean, who's going to deny somebody their quote-unquote rights? So, see, the left thinks that rights come from them, not from God. So each group has its own set of rights that it comes up with. But one of the things that holds the group together is the belief that the group is alienated from society, that the group is being punished by society, victimized and oppressed by society. And so a story like this, mischaracterized, distorted as it is, with a media that's willing to buy into the distortion, either because they're willfully ignorant or they're biased or both, okay, this all serves to advance an agenda. The group gathers strength in its cohesion, And the thing that causes the group to stay cohesive is the belief that they are all being victimized by some greater thing on the outside. That's how this works. That's what this is all about. It's ginned up. It's BS. And I'll be right back. From the War Room, it's America's Morning Show. You remember the bully that pulled up to the Chick-fil-A and was berating this poor little girl who was just trying to serve him a sandwich? You remember that? Well, here, listen to this soundbite. Maybe it'll bring back some memories.
I don't know how you live with yourself and work here. I don't understand it. This is a horrible corporation with horrible values. You deserve better.
Yes, it's a horrible corporation. And, of course, this guy, he was really proud of this. He put it on Facebook or some kind of social media so everybody could see, what an incredible soldier he was for the left. And here, listen to this again. Who does something like this? Well, I can tell you, a bully does it.
I don't know how you live with yourself and work here. I don't understand it. This is a horrible corporation with horrible values. You deserve better.
Okay, well, ABC has done a follow-up. Now, by the way, when you consider Fast and Furious is still unaddressed. The IRS, still unaddressed. We've got major scandals, and ABC has gotten time during the evening news to do a follow-up on the guy that was yelling and pissing and moaning at some poor girl in a drive-up window. I mean, that alone is interesting. So, anyway, here's ABC, and they're trying to make this guy look like a victim of the controversy when he's a perp.
When I saw that his family had suffered, it bugged me.
No, that was Greg Gutfeld. Hold on a second. Let me get, number 22. Here is ABC.
You may recall the kerfuffle erupted when the chicken chain's president took a public stand against same-sex marriage. Count Adam Smith a casualty of that war. All because of a 2-minute, 20-second YouTube video.
I don't regret the stand that I took.
Oh.
But I regret the way I talked to her.
And now he's got a beard. He's got a Maynard G. Krebs beard, for those of you old enough to remember the days of the original hippies. Yeah, the beatniks. So he's got his beatnik beard. And Greg Gutfeld said this.
It's now nearly 3 years and he's...
Oh, hold on a second. Why am I getting the wrong sound bites here? I got number 22. I want 23. Here we go.
When I saw that his family had suffered, it bugged me. I am wary of how the internet escalates shaming, for it has no send button for forgiveness, and it ruins lives simply because it can. Sure, Smith is a jerk for shaming that innocent girl, but is it time to forgive? Nah. Smith is a tool. Painted as a victim of the controversy, it was really his own ego that brought him down. It wasn't about a cause or a moral conviction, or else he wouldn't have posted his performance on the web in a fit of, oh, look how awesome I am. The guy wanted stardom and attention. He got it, and he still wants it.
Yeah, well, he got his 15 minutes of fame, see, and now he's stuck with it. Here's a little more from ABC.
It's now nearly 3 years and he's still unemployed. He's turned to meditation and the wisdom of Buddha.
I'm not a Buddhist. I just found that to be really helpful.
He also sent us this video of him and his kids dancing to the song Shake It Off.
Oh, dear. Dana Perino had a great idea. If you're feeling sorry for this guy because he doesn't have a job, Dana Perino had a great idea.
It's the nationwide income and wealth.
Oh, my God. Hold on a second.
I got an idea.
What?
Why doesn't the left hire him? Why doesn't someone from the left who agrees with him, that hates Chick-fil-A so much, pony up, give the guy a job?
Excellent. That's exactly right. Where are all the people on the left who see this guy as a hero, who hate Chick-fil-A? Why haven't they stepped forward? I mean, how about Tim Cook over there at Apple? Maybe he should step forward and give this guy a gig.
We're all American and we work real hard.
From the War Room, it's America's Morning Show. First broadcast and ironing out the kinks here. There are some people on Facebook saying they can't get logged in. I don't know what's going on with that because we're all logged in here. But anyway, we'll try to iron all of this out as time goes. This is the bleeding edge of actually where radio is going. It seems to be going in the direction of mobile media. So anyway, we're going to try and get all that straightened out. In the meantime, do you remember when Joan Rivers, funny, she died shortly after this, somebody asked Joan Rivers on the street about Michelle Obama, and Joan Rivers said, well, she's a transvestite. Yeah, everybody knows it. Do you remember when she said that? Well, this is funny because a couple of weeks ago, Obama was addressing the troops here, and he called her Mike.
Distinguished guests and men and women of the finest military in the world. Most of all, Admiral Mullen, Deborah. Michael and I also want to acknowledge...
Michael and I? No, it's Michelle. See, so here, now begins the next conspiracy theory. That, Michelle Obama is actually a transvestite. So there you have it, folks. In case you wanted something to keep you busy today, there you go. All right, let's see. Where are we? Harry Reid. We did this at 6 o'clock, but if you got up late, you really need to hear this because this is really why people hate and don't trust government. Harry Reid went on the Senate floor, if you remember, back during the campaign with Mitt Romney. He went on the Senate floor. Now, remember, on the Senate floor, he is immune from charges of libel and slander. He can say anything he wants to. So he gets up there on the Senate floor and says this.
The word's out that he hasn't paid any taxes for 10 years. Let him prove that he has paid taxes, because he hasn't.
Let's hear that one more time. I love the way he says right at the beginning.
The word's out that
The word's out, Harry, because you put it out. I mean, look, the press, of course, they don't bother to correct any of this stuff. I mean, as long as it supports the Democrat cause, they don't care. Well, Dana Bash, Harry Reid, as you know, and I don't know, maybe you don't know, but you think it's possible that nobody knows? Well, Harry Reid has decided not to run again for the Senate. And so Dana Bash from CNN has Harry on the show, see? And Dana asks Harry Reid the question.
So no regrets about Mitt Romney, about the Koch brothers. Some people have even called it McCarthyite.
Well, they call it whatever they want. Romney didn't win, did he? Romney didn't win, did he? Romney didn't win, did he?
Yeah, they can call it whatever they want, but hey, it worked. And by the way, this didn't start with Harry Reid. I mean, it goes back to the 1990s, to the Clintons. I mean, the Grand Master Liars. I remember back in the 1990s, CNN used to have a show. Oh, it was hosted by Bill Snyder. I forget the name of the show, but Snyder was a political commentator, and Clinton had got his knickers in a twist about something. He got caught. Now, it wasn't Monica Lewinsky. It was something else. But anyway, Clinton concocted this lie to satisfy the press and to get out from under whatever the controversy was at the time. And again, I apologize because I don't remember exactly what it was. But anyway, so Bill Snyder gave him the award for the political play of the week, not because it was such a good political play, but it was such a good lie. And I'm sitting there in front of the TV going, this guy's getting an award for lying. Well, it was a lie, but God, it was a great lie, wasn't it? So here's Harry Reid on the floor of the Senate saying something about a presidential candidate that he knows is absolutely false, but he says it anyway.
The word's out that he hasn't paid any taxes for 10 years. Let him prove that he has paid taxes, because he hasn't.
And, of course, Dana Bash, whatever her name is, from CNN, asks Harry about this. I mean, at least he was honest about it.
So no regrets about Mitt Romney, about the Koch brothers. Some people have even called it McCarthyite.
Well, they call it whatever they want. Romney didn't win, did he? Romney didn't win, did he? Romney didn't win, did he?
So there you have it. That's that's the rule of thumb. The rule of thumb is whatever wins. It doesn't matter if it's true or false. See, and this all comes down to the narratives of the Duke rape case, the narratives of Jackie and Rolling Stone, whatever narrative it is, doesn't matter whether it's true as long as it advances the narrative. And I mentioned before on, I think it was Megyn Kelly. No, was it Megyn Kelly? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it may not have been. But anyway, they were talking about Ferguson. Hands up, don't shoot. And there was one black guy, I don't know who he was, but he was on the panel. And the guy said, well, maybe hands up, don't shoot didn't happen. But it speaks to a larger issue. Well, that sounds good, but that makes no sense at all. What do you mean it speaks to a larger issue? If there was really a larger issue, you wouldn't need fake stories to speak to it. There's no excuse for dishonesty, whether the issue is real or isn't real. If the story's not true, it's not true. It didn't happen. And this idea of, well, it speaks to a larger issue, that's BS. That is intellectual crap. Anyway, speaking of crap, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to give away Western civilization.
Bomb, 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 Iran. Bomb, 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 Iran. Some rocks. Tell the Ayatollah gonna put you in a box, bomb Iran.
Well, if anybody bombs Iran, it's going to be Bibi Netanyahu. Unfortunately, it's not going to be us. Somebody needs to do it. I'm sorry. Look, those guys leave us no choice. In the meantime, we've got John Kerry, who's a complete fool. He is an absolute buffoon with a baritone voice. John Kerry doesn't have a clue. And, of course, Obama, I don't know whether he has a clue or not. It doesn't matter because these Iranian negotiations are not about nuclear weapons or the future of the world or anything else. They're all about me. They're all about Obama. It's all about his ego, his narcissism. It's all about his legacy. He wants a deal, and it doesn't matter how bad the deal is. He'll be remembered for the deal. Let's not forget, and don't think the mullahs don't remember, North Korea. Jimmy Carter comes back, like Neville Chamberlain waving the piece of paper, the agreed framework. Hey, we got an agreed framework here, and the North Koreans promised not to make a bomb. And so we believed that. We had a piece of paper. So what did the North Koreans do? Well, they used the fact that we weren't watching them because of the agreed framework to do what? Build a bomb. And they announced that they had nuclear weapons very, very close to the date that Jimmy Carter received the Nobel Peace Prize for this stupid piece of paper that meant nothing to the North Koreans, and now they'd gone nuke, but he still gets the Peace Prize. So I guess, John Kerry's looking for a Peace Prize. Obama's already got one for nothing. The Peace Prize means nothing now, thanks to these people. The left has done with the Peace Prize what they do with everything else, cheapen it, destroy its value. They destroy the value of everything they touch. Really. Eventually, they'll destroy the value of your 401k. Everything they touch, they either loot or they destroy the value of it. So you think the mullahs didn't pay attention when North Korea schnookered the Clinton administration and Jimmy Carter? Of course they paid attention. See, it doesn't matter what the agreement is going to be. If they reach an agreement, it doesn't matter. One thing is true. Iran wants the bomb, and they're going to get it. It doesn't matter what the agreement is. Now, what was it, yesterday or the day before, they had agreed to let Russia take their enriched nuclear material and store it for them somewhere. I guess turn it into Skittles and iced tea or whatever they're going to turn it into. And then at the last minute in the negotiations, what do the mullahs do? They turn around and say, you know what? We're moving the goalpost. We don't want to do that. See, now, that is the point. Here's the difference between John Kerry and Barack Obama and Ronald Reagan. At that point, first of all, Reagan wouldn't even be negotiating with these people, but let's just say that Reagan was at the table. When they at the last minute decided to renege on a major portion of the deal, Reagan would have stood right up like he did in Reykjavik and walked out the door. And, of course, when he did that, the left went nuts. But it worked. But see, we want a bargain so bad, the mullahs can smell it. They're playing us. And, of course, you know, by moving the goalpost here, what do? They buy themselves more time without an agreement to do what? To build a bomb. Because that's what it's about. For them, it's about going nuclear. For Obama, it's about his ego. Oh, Western civilization? Well, Western civilization can go to hell because you got to remember, Obama hates Western civilization. Look at his background. Look at his writings. I mean, here's a man who got a free ride through Occidental, Columbia. I don't know what he did there. He got a free ride through Harvard and then sat around in the dorm smoking dope, complaining about how bourgeois society was oppressing him. Now, this guy hates Western civilization, and as far as he's concerned, he doesn't care if Iran gets a bomb. As a matter of fact, he hopes they do. He's setting it. Why does he hope they? Well, because he believes that Iran won't use the bomb, but what they will do is use it as bargaining leverage to literally bargain Israel into non-existence over time. Just to eat away, eat away, eat away. It gives him the leverage to do that. And because Obama, you ever notice when Obama talks about ISIS, he talks about ISIL? There's a difference, you know, between ISIS and ISIL. When you call ISIS ISIL, you are accepting the caliphate. Because ISIL is Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. Levant, L-A-V, was it A? Yeah, L-A-V-A-N-T, the Levant. The Levant is an area, a broad swath of the Middle East, which is considered to be what the caliphate will be, and there's no Israel in it. So when you call ISIS ISIL, you are sending a message to the Middle East that you understand that the future is a Middle East without Israel. Make no mistake, every time you hear him say ISIL, and he knows it, he knows what he's saying. Anyway, we've got some sound bites on this. We'll get to those. I'm going to have to take a break here and regroup, but we will be back momentarily, folks. Just stand by. From the war room, I'm back. Quinn in the morning, on your radio and up your computer. All right, let's get to some of these sound bites on Iran. Yesterday, David Ignatius appeared on Morning Joe. Of course, everybody knows this is a lousy deal. Everybody knows it. Even though they're just plodding ahead with it. And the fact is, we want it so bad, it stinks. I mean, the mullahs that can smell blood, I mean, they're playing us. These guys are in the driver's seat. I want to sell John Kerry a used car. This guy could be the worst negotiator in history. Anyway, here's David Ignatius as to why this is a bad deal.
The biggest danger of this deal, Joe, is that it will set off an arms race by Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, each of which will want to get the exact same deal Iran has. And you think it's dangerous now? Just wait.
And Charles Krauthammer weighed in as well.
We are told that the solution is going to be that the centrifuges will be running, but they're only going to be using zinc, xenon, and germanium to produce medical isotopes. If you believe that the multi-billion-dollar facility inside of a mound is producing xenon isotopes, then your name is John Kerry.
That's exactly right. And then finally, George Will. George Will, last night on Special Report with Brett Baer weighed in as well.
In fact, we are not trying to block their path to a nuclear weapon. We're trying to make the path steeper and longer to a breakout period of no less than 1 year to get a nuclear weapon. Today they began referring not to an agreement but to an understanding that we were supposed to have, and I'm not sure what the difference is. But the news reports this morning said they were only differing about 3 things at this point: the duration of the restrictions on their nuclear activity, the lifting of the sanctions, and the inspections regime. That's everything. So
yeah.
I'm not sure what it is we're close to.
Well, what we're close to is Obama's legacy. And as I said earlier, it's more than Obama's legacy. You know, you look at this and you say, well, you know, these people are giving Iran a pathway to a nuclear weapon. It's almost as though they wanted them. I'm telling you. Valerie Jarrett, who is Obama's shadow and basically the Communist Party representative to the White House. You got to know Valerie's background. Her father was Vernon Jarrett, who was a communist who wrote for communist newspapers in Chicago. He was tied in with the communist mayor of Detroit, Coleman Young, who destroyed Detroit. It's all a piece of this also New York network of communists as well. So, I mean, it all works together. But Valerie Jarrett was born in Iran. They want Iran to have this bomb. They want them to have the bomb so they can have the negotiation leverage to chip away at Israel until there is nothing left of it. And little Alan Parsons. From the War Room, it's America's Morning Show. Quinn in the morning, coast to coast, around your radio and up your computer. Hey, guess what? They found one of the Weather Underground bombers. You'll never guess what he's been doing all these years. We'll get to that story, hopefully, before the day's over, and if we don't, then we'll get it tomorrow. Let's see here. What do we have? There was something I wanted to... Oh, I was listening to WYSL's audio, as many of you were, and I see that there's a Rochester, New York weather app. It's the News 10, what is it, NBC? Yeah, the News 10 weather app. You push it and snow comes out of your iPhone. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a, ladies and gentlemen, we have this is a new theme. Yes, a new gay heads up theme. I feel pretty. That's right, I do. Oh, so pretty. Mm-hmm. I feel pretty and witty and bright. And I pity any boy who isn't me tonight. This is by Peter Heck. It's in the Indianapolis Star, and actually this was written, I think, while the Religious Freedom Restoration Act was still being debated. Now, of course, you know that the media is out there. This is controversial. This is a controversial law. Of course, there's nothing controversial about the law except the outrage, the fake outrage ginned up mostly here by gay and lesbian activist groups. Peter Heck writes, a few years ago, I hosted a gay activist attorney, Andrea Ritchie, on my radio program and asked her whether she believed the homosexual lobby could peacefully coexist with traditional Christian morality. After a very pregnant, you should pardon the term, pause, she responded pointedly, sure, if Christians will give up their resistance to our cause. That's right, do not resist. That's it. You have no hope. Just don't resist. Folks, it's not about your liberty. Not at all. No, your freedom means nothing when the left is around. Today, in the midst of the inane opposition to the Indiana Religious Freedom Bill, her alarming words prove frighteningly prophetic. Now, let's be clear about what we're witnessing, says Heck. Seeking to harness the power of the state to deny the rights of conscience to those who disagree with you, as the opponents of Senate Bill 101, the Religious Restoration Act, are surely attempting to do, is a frightening appeal to a 21st century reincarnation of fascism. Believe like us, think like us, embrace our views, or be fined, fired, evicted, intimidated, or punished by the state. Now, for all the insipid talk among its spokesmen about open-mindedness and tolerance, this strand of what liberal comedian Bill Maher dubbed the gay mafia is a sworn enemy of both. And like their brethren of a century ago, the neo-fascists among us rely on a healthy dose of propaganda to fool the masses into supporting their agenda. I'll take the much-publicized letter to Governor Mike Pence from the organizers of Gen Con, that's spelled G-E-N, capital C-O-N. That's the state's largest convention. The letter threatens Pence that Gen Con is going to look somewhere else, beginning in 2020, if he signs the legislation that, in their words, could allow for refusal of service or discrimination against our attendees. Of course, no such legislation exists, and this bill wouldn't do that. Under Indiana's religious freedom law, not one Gen Con attendee, gay, transgender, cross-dressing, whatever, could be denied a seat at a lunch counter by that mythical boogeyman, the Christian bigot burger maker, with his gaydar, beep-boop, beep-boop, fully activated. That's not what the law does. What the law does is it protects a private business owner, who actually might be gay themselves, from being coerced by the power of government to act in a manner that's incompatible with their deeply held religious convictions. In other words, it protects the Jewish sign maker from being forced by the state to make pro-Nazi placards for the next skinhead convention. Yeah, I mean, what if I were to find a banquet hall that was owned by a Muslim and demand that I be allowed to hold my pig roast there? See, what this does is, this is not a weapon. It's a shield. And, of course, that's why the left hates it, because they don't want you to have a shield. They want to be able to bully you into non-existence, because they're going to get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too. Further, supposing Gen Con decides, say, to leave Indianapolis in another 5 years, where would they go? Chicago? Nope. Illinois has an identical religious freedom law, as do 7 of the top 10 convention cities in the nation, as ranked by CVent. That's the world's leading authority on strategic meetings and management. I didn't even know there was such a thing. In fairness to Gen Con, they're not the only ones who bought and sold the propaganda. The Cummins people, the guys that make diesel engines, the Cummins engine, yeah, they railed against the law as being bad for business in the state. You know, the funny thing is there's 20 states that have this. It hasn't been bad for business for anybody until now. Of course, then again, Pence is a Republican. Apparently that makes a difference. It's interesting, given that Cummins has expanded their own operation into states that boast an identical religious freedom law to one that they're opposing. And then there's Eskenazi. Funny, the word Nazi is contained in this word. Isn't that strange? Eskenazi Health, whoever they are, argued that enactment of the law could lead to the denial of health services for people in need of medical attention. So in order to bolster this outlandish and irresponsible claim, one activist testified before the State House that before her female partner died of ovarian cancer, she worried that the enactment of SB 101 in Indiana might cause her to lose her cancer care. Unfortunately, in the midst of her emotional testimony, it came to light that she had been regularly taking her ailing partner to Illinois for chemotherapy. As previously noted, Illinois has an identical religious freedom law already in place, and, by the way, voted for by Barack Hussein Obama when he was an Illinois senator. Again, the hypocrisy here, the BS. You can cut it with a knife. Now, all this intentional misrepresentation and deception begs the question, why such opposition to the rights of conscience, particularly when those rights were among the most cherished to our founders? It was Thomas Jefferson who declared, quote, "No provision in our Constitution ought to be dearer to man than that which protects the rights of conscience against the enterprises of civil authority." And yet today, Elaine Huguenin loses her private photography business in New Mexico because the civil authority there told her to violate her conscience and participate in a gay wedding or face the consequences. And so, it forced her out of business. In 1932, the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini outlined the doctrine of fascism. And by the way, just to clear things up here, because I like to do this every time we touch on this, for decades we have been told that fascism and Nazism is right-wing. Well, it may have been right-wing in European parlance, but Nazi is National Socialism. Nazism and fascism is about iron-fisted control by government, by the state, of people's lives. It is left-wing. Ever since the end of World War II, the New York Times, CBS, the rest of the media has pounded into people's heads the lie that Nazism and fascism was right-wing. Why did they do that? Because they wanted to protect the credentials of communism, which they loved. Why do you think the New York Times covered up the induced famine at the hands of Joseph Stalin in the Ukraine that killed 10 million people? They lied about it again and again and again. Walter Duranty was the writer who lied and lied and lied and denied. You talk about deniers. Denied it was going on because communism had to be protected. It was the wave of the future. So let's see, Nazism. Well, we liked that a lot before the war. We made Hitler Man of the Year in Time magazine. Even FDR was all on board with Hitler. He was on board with Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin. Got to the point it was so bad that his minders in the White House said, you better back off of this Hitler thing. We think there's some problems going on. Oh, yeah, they all loved Hitler because they loved the idea of state-controlled economies. And then the little Jewish problem came to light. 6 million Jews, and all of a sudden we had to find some way to separate Nazism and fascism from communism. So we told the world that these guys were over on the right, and the communists were on the compassionate left, along with the unions and the advancement of civil society. And so they covered up Stalin's crimes. In 1932, dictator Benito Mussolini outlined the doctrine of fascism. He said, "The fascist conception of the state is all-embracing. Outside of it, no human or spiritual values can exist. The fascist state interprets, develops, and potentates the whole life of the people." In other words, it'll tell you what to think, it'll tell you what to say. Does any of that sound familiar? Now, what should alarm Hoosiers, that's people who live in Indiana, for those of you in McKeesport, what should alarm Hoosiers is not the desire to collectively enshrine the individual rights of conscience in state law, rather the increasingly vocal component of our population that with nearly unanimous media support seeks to harness the power of the state to demand that we all think, act, and behave just like them or else. See, when government becomes the all-purpose hammer for the left, we all become nails. In the meantime, a lesson here. This is a great lesson for your kids. Show them how media and politics together can coercively distort culture. We have 20 states and the feds who have essentially the same law, and Charlie Schumer actually sponsored it. You don't get much more Democrat than Charlie Schumer. Schumer sponsored it. Clinton signed it into law. So what's the uproar about? Again, in order for group politics to work, groups have to stay together and adhere. And the glue for that is the belief that they are victims. Victimhood über alles.
tight.
From the War Room, it's America's morning show. Well, whenever there's a controversy about anything, whenever anybody makes the case that discrimination is out there, you know, when I was a kid, discrimination was a good thing. You know, a discriminating person was a person of taste who discriminated against things that were cheap and superficial. I remember Dunhill cigarettes for discriminating tastes. I discriminate all the time, you know. I got a Corvette Z06. I could have had a 700 horsepower Mustang, but I discriminated against Ford. I mean, I didn't want to make them feel bad or anything, but I wanted the Corvette. Well, anyway, anytime there's anybody accusing anybody of discrimination, make no mistake about it, Al Sharpton is not far behind. And here he is on the Indiana law.
This is a key moment for the country.
Oh, yeah.
Too often in our history, we've seen religion used to justify attacks on other people's rights.
Really?
From slavery to Jim Crow to women's right to vote.
What about Islam?
That same fight is with us today.
Yeah.
And we can't let it stand.
No, Al, you can't let it end because it's how you make your living. What a piece of work this clown is, and I can't figure out why anybody in corporate America or anywhere else pays any attention to Al Sharpton. The guy still owes about $4 million in tax. Do you think you'd be walking around on the street if you owed $4 million in tax? I doubt it very much.
This is a key moment for the country. Too often in our history, we've seen religion used to justify attacks on other people's rights.
But never a word about Islam. Never a word about Sharia law. Interesting, no? And there's Al Sharpton out there. Let me translate what he just said. Send money. Send money and I'll fix it. I blew it in Ferguson. I blew it in Ferguson. I blew it at the Duke rape case. But, come on, all that speaks to a larger narrative. And besides, that's so yesterday. So here's the latest one. What a clown. What an absolute rodeo clown this guy is. Ladies and gentlemen, hold on a second while I find it. Yes, here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a Weather Underground heads up. Well, guess what? The bomb guru for the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers' group, who never served a day in jail, well, he spent the last decades on the lam teaching in New York City classrooms. How come all of these radicals all end up teaching someplace? Like Bill Ayers ends up being one of the vaunted members of the academic community at the University of Chicago, and along with his wife, who's another Looney Tune. Ronald Fliegelman built explosives for the Weather Underground, the far-left group that launched domestic bombing campaigns in the 60s and 70s. But when the group was dissolved, Fliegelman managed to safely fade away into the square life. For 25 years, he worked as a public special ed teacher, retiring to a quiet life in Park Slope, Brooklyn. According to Days of Rage, America's Radical Underground, the FBI in the Forgotten Age of Revolutionary Violence. That's a book title. It's a mouthful. And he's unapologetic about his past, too. He told the Post, "I'm proud of what I did." The Weather Underground, first organized in '69, a splinter of the SDS, Students for a Democratic Society. Their members were mostly white, middle class, and I might add, guilty, advocating the complete overthrow of the U.S. government. Only we want to overthrow it for freedom. They wanted to overthrow it for slavery. They wanted to be communists. Of course, that's the way liberals think. It's upside down. Capitalism is slavery, and advancing socialism is liberation somehow. Under the leadership of Bill Ayers who went on to become the University of Illinois professor, whose political relationship with then Barack Obama was scrutinized, not very much. During the 2008 presidential campaign, the group also pushed for a sexual revolution. Their slogan was Smash Monogamy. So, yeah, well, look, it was a great way to get chicks, to be a revolutionary. I mean, ask Che Guevara. Ask all of these lefty. They all abused women. Every single one of them Bill Clinton, all these guys who carry the banner for feminism end up screwing women every chance they get. It's just amazing to watch these people work. In the meantime, this guy is off the hook completely. He built the bombs. And, of course, he's got the same line as Bill Ayers. The line is, we didn't do it to hurt anybody. Oh, really? Well, then what were the nails and screws and wires in your bombs about, you liars? And it should never be forgotten that these are the people who saw fit to launch Barack Obama into politics. No one else was ever launched by these people, just that one man.